order. And at this time, we will have a roll call by districts. As I call the district, if you would answer, please. Yes, you're here for our records. District 1.
Yes.
District 2.
Here.
District 3.
Here.
Thank you. District 4.
Here.
District 5.
Here.
District 6.
Here.
District 7. Here. District 8.
Here.
District 9.
Here.
District 10.
Here.
District 11.
Here.
District 12. District 13.
Here.
District 14.
Here.
Thank you. At this time now, I will call on Jamie Boswell to do our invocation.
Dear Lord, we're thankful for the blessings each and every day. We ask that you provide safety for the men and women in our armed forces around the world, and also ask that you protect the men and women in law enforcement across this country, and pray they are returned to their families safe and unharmed. We ask that you guide us in our deliberations today so that the people of this state will be the beneficiaries of your wisdom. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Now we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and I'd like to again welcome the board here and for today's transportation board meeting, and visitors as well. Hope you're having, and our staff also. And I want to say just quickly that I've enjoyed being the chairman this past year. As you know, during the later part of the meeting, we will have board elections. So we'll get on with the rest of the business today, and I will now ask for the approval of the minutes for the July meeting. All right, we have a motion. Second. Any questions? We will now ask for a vote. Everybody in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it. Aye. This time now we will have Mr. Albert Shelby, to come forward for the Director of Program Delivery.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, members of the board. I'm here to present the projects the department is proposing to advertise for the September 2021 letting. Before we present September, here are the FY 2022 results. It led a total of 26 projects. The chart shows the number of projects by improvement type. The value of these 26 projects is approximately $105 million through the July 2021 bid awards, and all were Gdot let. This chart shows the dollar amount distribution by improvement type, with maintenance, bridge, and road projects making up the bulk of these types. Here are the results of the July 2021 letting. Of the 30 Gdot let contracts presented to the board, 26 were awarded and 4 were rejected from the letting. Now I'm going to discuss the projects in the September 2021 letting. We have a total of 21 projects, and all are Gdot let. The next 2 slides list these 21 projects arranged by congressional district. As you can see with this slide, we are letting a variety of projects throughout the state to address bridge, maintenance, and safety issues. As you may have noticed in the project list a few slides back, 5 of our projects are safety focused. We propose to let a variety of safety improvements, including roadway signage and pavement markings, shoulder widening, and a railroad crossing signal upgrade. These projects are great examples of our continuing commitment to improve the safety of the traveling public. This next project is the replacement of the structurally deficient bridge on State Route 25 over the Savannah River using a design-build delivery methodology. The existing bridge was constructed in 1922 and reconstructed in 1954, 67 years ago. Here's a ground view of this two-span truss bridge that's going to be replaced. The adjacent project is the replacement of the structurally deficient bridge on State Route 25 over Middle River, also using a design-build methodology. This existing bridge was also constructed in 1922, and it was widened in 1953, 68 years ago. And here's a view of that ground bridge to be replaced. This next project will resurface State Route 10 from the DeKalb County line to State Route 124 for 7 miles. The section was last repaved in 2009, 12 years ago, and is an excellent example of our continued commitment to maintaining our existing infrastructure. This project will resurface State Route 174 from State Route 106 to State Route 8 for 7 miles. This section was last repaved in 2004, 17 years ago. This resurfacing project will resurface State Route 88 from Archer Road to the Jefferson County line for 10.59 miles. This section was last repaved in 2002, 19 years ago. And this bridge replacement project will replace a structurally deficient bridge on Old Treon Highway over Dry Creek. The existing bridge was constructed in 1936, 85 years ago. And here's a ground view of that bridge to be replaced. The following project will be advertised as soon as possible. A special approval will be asked of the board at a later time for that advertisement. It is the replacement of the demolished bridge on State Route 86 over I-16. The existing bridge was damaged by a collision last month. The incident shown in the picture required the bridge to be demolished and detoured and traffic detoured. The project will replace the bridge. We expect an off-cycle special letting approval from the board once the plans are ready for advertisement.
We're asking for that approval today.
Oh, we are. Okay, so we're going to ask for that approval with the entirety of the September letting, and Mr. Brad Saxon will give a more comprehensive report later on where we are with this replacement. So with that project, we're going to have 22 projects that we're going to propose for the September 21 letting. This chart shows the distribution by improvement types. The estimate of the projects in the September 2021 letting is approximately $124 million. This chart shows the dollar amount distribution by improvement type. So I now ask for your consideration for approval of letting the 22 projects that we're going to let in the September 2021 letting.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we now ask for approval on the July letting.
So moved.
Any questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Shelby,
Thank you.
for that report.
Ms. Shelby,
Yes,
I have a
go ahead,
I have a
Mr.
question.
Brown.
Those 4 projects that were not awarded in the earlier slides, what was the reason for that?
Each of them were rejected for a slightly different reason.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them were just because we didn't get good bids, and so we're going to re-advertise them. Some there were additional questions that need to be answered, so we pulled them out, and we're going to re-advertise it just so we answer all the questions for the contractors.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Now, a revision to the construction work program. Matt Markham, if you would come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members
Morning.
of the board, Commissioner. Come before you this morning to ask for your consideration to add 3 projects to the construction work program. I came before you last month to give you a heads up that these were going to be requested, so I'm coming back to you today to ask for that that request. These are 3 projects, but they're actually three segments of one larger project to provide a full depth pavement reconstruction and guardrail replacement for I-285 along the west wall from State Route 14 Roosevelt Highway up to Paces Ferry Road for a total project length of about 17 miles. This project is divided into three segments based on coordination with the Gdot Office of Maintenance. These three are asked to be for your favorable consideration to be added to the work program.
Thank you. We now need a motion for the construction work program for these changes, for revision. We have a motion, a second. Any questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I ask Mr. Joshua Waller to come forward to give us an update on the federal reauthorization plan. Thank you, Mr. Waller. Thank you for coming.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Commissioner, and of course, Matt. Hope everyone's doing well this morning. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide you the most recent update on federal transportation reauthorization. First, I pulled a slide that I showed y'all back in June. And the question at the top of it is, how did these things come together? You had the president proposing infrastructure plan, you had Congress needing to do reauthorization, then you had the question of how it's all paid for. And so at that time, we were kind of unsure, but we now have sort of seen how it's looking like it's going to play out. So I'll walk through at the start of the year. First, in March, the president proposed the American Jobs Plan, a $2.2 trillion plan that included hard infrastructure like roads, bridges, broadband, and other wastewater things, and then some other kind of social infrastructure. Then kind of the next major development was in the Senate side. Two of the three authorizing committees passed out bills out of their committees for reauthorizing transportation unanimously, and a bipartisan vote kind of establishing the policy. That happened in the end of March and then June. Then you have what originally was like the Gang of 10, 5 Republican senators, 5 Democratic senators, became the Gang of 22, ensuring that they could get whatever consensus they reached, they could reach potentially 60 votes. And so June 20th, you have that framework that came out. You then on the House side towards, as they approached July 1st, you had the T&I committee put forth their bill, $574 billion. It was a reauthorization bill. It was a plus up from the existing FAST Act, but a lot of different policy changes than what had been adopted in the Senate reauthorization bills that had just only made it as far as committee. That passed out of the House on July 1st. They sent that bill to the Senate, H.R. 3684. You have this continuing effort with the Gang of 22 that worked with the underlying policy legislation that was passed out of the Senate committees. So they cobbled together this sort of additive component of additional infrastructure funding with the underlying reauthorization bill that was in the Senate. They used as a vehicle the House Invest Act, the House reauthorization bill. They basically stripped all of that out, replaced the Invest Act with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, about 1.2 trillion. So it settled on that number that the Gang of 22 had approved. They passed that on August the 10th, sent that over to the House, where it's pending a vote at this time. The next day, and I know we've talked about before kind of this, traditional reauthorization and then kind of this grander vision of additional spending, much broader aspects of our society through reconciliation. The Senate also passed the next day a reconciliation bill, or initiating that with a budget resolution, about $3.5 trillion, sending it the next day over to the House as well. And I bring this up because where we all, and we'll talk about this at the end, where they are, the two fate of those bills are probably at the moment intertwined in some way. So as part of this IIJA, they took the underlying Senate bill, and then you have the additive pieces. So you've seen this slide before. There's some variation in the numbers, but this is sort of the additive money over what would have been the traditional baseline if just the FAST Act had been reauthorized. So $110 billion for roads, $66 billion for passenger rail. And then we'll talk a little bit more. I'm going to provide a breakout of what's coming to Georgia. And then here were the non-transportation infrastructure pieces: $65 billion for power, $65 billion for broadband, $55 for water infrastructure, 47 for resiliency projects, environmental cleanup, 21 billion. So I'm going to jump into the IIJA, and this is the bill that's pending in the House that looks to be the most viable candidate to get reauthorization and a broader infrastructure bill done. So Georgia would see a plus up. You see actual FY21. That's what's currently the last year of the extended FAST Act, 1.4 billion in apportionment. See an increase of about 27% or 21%, sorry, with a 2% increase over each subsequent year of the 5-year bill. So a note there is with this increased apportionment, it's going to require an increased match of state funds. And usually for the program, you're talking about 20% match. Here is those top line dollars broken out by program. So the NHPP program, those fund projects that are on the national highway system in Georgia. You can see that program was plussed up by 7.1%. The Surface Transportation Block Grant Program, which goes out, it can go to a broader categories of roads, but portions of it are sub-allocated based off population. One of the things the bill did is there's a set aside for off-system bridges. This bill increases the amount that's set aside for off-system bridges. The next program that got almost a 24% increase is the Highway Safety Improvement Program. Those are safety projects. Railroad crossing program basically just stayed flat from FAST Act levels. CMAQ are those metropolitan area improvements, those non-attainment areas, projects to improve environmental quality. So it's pretty much just an increase for inflation. Planning, you see a metropolitan planning, an increase about 23%. And then freight, we actually took a haircut off of what we had in 21 going into 22, but then you'll see a 2% increase over the life of the bill. And then carbon reduction is that new program, somewhat similar to CMAQ, but it's geared towards how do you reduce the carbon impact of carbon and you know, improving the environment. Protect formula, those funds are to go to projects that are helping to build up resiliency. If you've got, particularly like in coastal areas where you have, or other places where weather and other natural disasters continue to have an impact on the infrastructure, to help improve the infrastructure to be more resilient to those events. So there's a few other, those were our traditional apportionment contract authority that I just walked through. There were some also formula programs that they use regular appropriation dollars. One is a bridge replacement, rehab, preservation, protection, and construction program. Over the 5-year period, Georgia will get $250 million. Gotta make a note here because that's about 0.86% of the total amount. The total program was $26.3 billion. Now, to give you some context, usually in formula, Georgia gets somewhere between 3 and 4% of the total national dollars. This, unfortunately, is the case where no good deed goes unpunished because they apportion this money based off of the number of poor and fair bridges in the state. And because this state has made such an investment in bridges, unfortunately, the way they did this formula, we found ourselves getting the least, we got the mandatory minimum. So the other program is a formula program is for vehicle electrification and charging infrastructure. Georgia would get about $135 million over the 5-year period. And then construction of ferry boats and ferry terminal facilities program, which would probably be administered by Department of Natural Resources, 4.5 over that 5-year period. But because they did with advanced appropriations, those funds are technically going to be available in the first year of the act. But we'll just have to see how the agencies ultimately, USDOT decides to portion that out.
Josh, go back to that. So down there that says National Vehicle Electric Formula Program for Charging Infrastructure, is that 134 billion? Million, so I wanted to correct. Yeah, that's good.
Sorry if I didn't mean if I said B. The B's and the M's and the T's are getting all
Jeff
up here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to ask a question related to this formula on bridge replacement here and what you described. Maybe you know this, maybe you might not. But in order for this act to make that determination about our bridges, that would have had to been done very, very quickly, because this proposal, I think, my understanding from the administration, started in, I think you referenced March, and here we are in August, I don't know, 6 months. can they make a determination on the state of our bridges in that amount of time to handicap us with such an appropriation?
So because states are required to provide that information on bridge conditions, USDOT took the existing most recent data, and that's how they estimated it. Now, it may be the case that there could be some tweak to that, but that was based off of the data that was available and what's been reported. That's what they crunched it out to be on the big spreadsheet. So,
yeah, we provide annual bridge reporting to Federal Highway for condition.
Next is looking at the Federal Transit Administration. So we don't have the same breakout in terms of programs, but you can see that the overall funding to Georgia would increase by about 27.7% in that first year, and then about an inflation adjustment for each subsequent year. But if we take kind of the existing programs and look at the percentage, you'd probably say in each of those years, about 49% would go to the urbanized area formula grants, 12% would go to the non-urbanized area formula grants, 26% would go to state of good repair, kind of capital investment or capital maintenance investments. Bus facilities, about 6%, 4% for enhanced mobility for seniors and the disabled. And so that's basically, until we get more confirmed numbers from FTA, that's a pretty good rule of thumb, or a pretty good way to estimate it. FAA funding, we're still waiting on FAA to provide more extensive analysis, and they may be waiting for it to be signed into law. What we know is about $15 billion, $3 billion a year of the 5-year period for the formula funds, and then discretionary funding of about $5 billion at $1 billion a year. Our team here has done kind of the back of the napkin number crunching, and probably put it potentially at a 5 to 25% increase in funds that would come to Georgia. And just to give you a frame of reference, there's our 21 FAA funds number, about $48 million. So anywhere between a 5 and 25% increase. So another thing, so that's all the formula funds that would be guaranteed to come to Georgia. Here's some examples of the competitive grant program. And one thing to note about this bill is it substantially increases the amount of funds that USDOT is going to be able to administer competitively. So $9.2 billion over 5 years for the Bridge Investment Program for bridges, a competitive program. Nationally significant multimodal freight and highway program is the new name for what was formerly called, would be the new name for what's formerly and currently called INFRA, $8.75 billion over 5 years. The Rural Surface Transportation Grant Program, $2 billion over 5 years. We talked about the formula funding we're going to get for electric vehicle infrastructure, but there's also a competitive grant program of $2.5 billion over 5 years. And then those Protect Resiliency formula funds we talked about, there's also a competitive program for that. So there are other opportunities to seek those funds. And then reconnecting communities, looking at projects that can go back and look at where you've perhaps had interstates and highways go through communities decades ago, look at ways to help kind of reconnect them. $1 billion over 5 years. Then you've got on the rail side, the federal, state, intercity passenger rail, about $12 billion. It's actually, I think, about $36 billion overall, but there's a set aside for kind of northeastern rail projects. So for the rest of the country, it's about $12 billion over 5 years. Then CRISI, the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvement Program, which I think there's a presentation later. You're going to see the success we've had over the past few years with CRISI. So they're including additional funds for the CRISI program of $5 billion over 5 years. Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program, $3 billion over 5 years. And then next, you've seen the slide before. This was in the Senate. This bill adopted basically some good policy changes that the Senate bill did in terms of codifying the one decision to improve environmental delivery, kind of setting a target of 2 years for that environmental document, doing some common sense codification of where you can reuse documents, as well as putting a shot clock on there and having a shot clock on getting that environmental document. So some good things that we were glad to see were included in the final bill, and this bill that's hopefully going to be near the final bill. Another thing I wanted to note, there was an amendment adopted that Senator Cruz and our Senator Warnock proposed that expanded potentially the future I-14 by including segments that go all the way from Texas to Augusta, designating as a high priority corridor. So it's not quite making it I-14, those segments I-14 yet. It's sort of placing a statement that Congress would like to see that become I-14, but the funding to get those segments upgraded so that they would be at interstate standards would still be funded through the normal process. The one thing that having this high priority designation could do is if any of those segments currently aren't eligible for NHPP, they could be potentially eligible. We'd have to see how USD ultimately interprets this language. So you can see those segments in blue are what the segments in red were added as high priority corridors in the FAST Act. The segments in blue were what was adopted as part of the IIJA. And a good significant portion of that in Georgia would follow the Fall Line Freeway. Well, is there, I'm good to go to the next slide. So next, kind of we've talked about what was in the bill and its impact and sort of the direct dollars of Georgia and the competitive grant programs. Here's sort of the prognosis. The House got both the infrastructure bill and have to act next on reconciliation. As a reminder from when we talked in June, both the House and Senate are very tight. So again, that 60 vote threshold in the Senate becomes very critical for moving something through in a bipartisan way. But as we look at the calendar, we know the House is scheduled to return on August the 23rd next week. And Majority Leader Steny Hoyer from Maryland said that they anticipate that they may stay throughout the week to resolve what they're going to do with the infrastructure bill as well as pass the resolution on reconciliation. We did see some of what I guess they would identify as themselves as the moderates in the House. Sort of that working group caucus in the House said, look, we want a clean vote. Let's move the infrastructure bill, get to the president's desk and do reconciliation next, but not tie the two together. The speaker seems at the moment to want to make sure that they get progress on the reconciliation bill before they send the infrastructure bill to the president. So you can see there, yet the orange shows where the Senate stayed late from there until August the 11th, and then the blue is when the House is expected to come back. And then that yellow, September 30th, is a reminder that no matter what happens, our current reauthorization for transportation and the current federal appropriations expire on September the 30th. So that is a hard deadline that one way or the other, they'll have to do something. So again, sort of that interplay of this infrastructure bill and the reconciliation process is going to have a big effect on how this turns out. And again, the September 30th deadline. So just a few points in conclusion. Important to remember, so with the increases to the formula programs, both apportionment and advanced general funds, it's going to necessitate increased levels of state matching funds, motor fuel fees, general funds. So that's the money that we know we're going to get, but this major expansion of these competitive programs really going to force us to continue to strengthen our strategic look at pursuing and actively going after these grant funds, which will also probably require match of motor fuel, transportation fees, and general funds. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. If there are any additional questions,
Thank you, Mr. Waller. Ken? Kevin?
Josh, thanks. Just firstly, there was a lot of great information in this presentation. Can you send a copy of that to the board?
Glad to.
You showed a lot of slides showing the various, monies based on the various programs. I was particularly interested in the highway spend, and I don't know if you can go back to that slide if possible, but I did some quick math. It looked like over 5 years we were getting an incremental 300 million per year for 5 years. Is my math order of magnitude right there?
Yeah, it's about, yeah. So you the 1.4 to about 1.7 in that first year, and then a 2%.
Right. So, simple math, 350 a year for 5 years comes out to, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 billion. But that amount, nationally, that's out of about 100 billion bucket, correct? It just seems, when you compare percentages and the formula match, that doesn't sound like the 3 to 4% formula. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around where I'm missing something.
So the 3 to 4% is of the amount that they apportion out to the state. So whatever they say, this portion is going to come out by formula. Usually we're about 3.5, 3.6 compared to other states. And that ties back to the formula of what Georgia, it ties back to some decades-old formula about how much Georgia pays into the Highway Trust Fund.
Okay.
And they've pretty much held that static. So to your point, and this is why I was underscoring that second bullet on that concluding side, is while state DOTs, we all collectively might have liked to see more of the top-line dollars go into that formula funding, a significant amount went into these competitive grant programs.
Okay.
So the 3.3 to 4% ties back to of the total that comes to states as formula.
Okay, understood. Okay, so which begs the question on kind of your last comment, which is strategically, does that imply we have to assess what we're doing to make sure that we're competing effectively for this, what sounds like a much more substantial part of monies over the next 5 years?
I think all states are going to have to, and US DOT, in fact, is the question they're asking themselves, is getting ramped up to be able to they've never delivered this much in terms of a grant program.
Okay.
They're usually, historically, going back to the FAST Act, primarily that formula money that comes to states via formula. So this is going to be a big change for DOT, is having this amount of grant funds. So obviously states want to be on the best footing to go after those funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Fine. Thank you, Josh, for that report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, I'll ask Ms. Angela Whitworth to come forward to give us a budget presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Typically, in a typical year, I would be here to present to you our recommended amended FY22 and 23 budget. But based off what you've just heard from Josh on what's going on in the federal world and Congress, we thought it would be prudent that we hold off to present the budget till we get a better understanding of what is really truly coming to Georgia, what are the funding needs that we're going to have, and that what we'll need. But what I do know, and I can tell you guys today, is I am going to go over what the FY22 amended revenue numbers that have been given to us by the Office of Planning and Budget for the amended FY22 and 23. As you are aware that typically we receive our excise and fee component numbers, estimates from the state economist, Jeffrey Dorfman, who does an analysis every year of those numbers, provides it to OPB, and OPB gives it to the department to prepare our budget. In this budget year, the instructions that came out from the Office of Planning and Budget was all state agencies were to have a flat budget for 22 and for 23, no increases. However, we're a little different here for the dedicated revenue stream. So here is a snapshot of what's been provided to us of our updated revenue for the amended budget. As you can see, our amended budget, you'll show a change of $6 million. We've asked for clarification on that. That was some interest earnings that had previously been given to the department. We're looking into that one. Also on the fee component, they had an additional $8.9 million that they've added in for fees, and they left the rideshare fee component flat. That's $7.6 million. And so the rideshare fees are the Uber and Lyft fees that are dedicated to the transit providers. They go for transit projects. Our portion for FY22 was $7.6 million that was used through the intermodal program. In FY23, you can see that their proposed numbers are an increase in excise of roughly almost $43 million. They also show an increase in fees of $7.3 million. As well as an increase in the rideshare fee component of $8.2 million. So our overall budget, you can see an increase there, roughly, a little bit under $60 million going into FY23. As far as the federal authorization, reauthorization that you have heard Josh just present to you, as you can kind of give you a general idea, you can see what is our estimated obligation authority for the amended FY22 and FY23. To kind of put it in context, our current OA number is a little bit over $1.2 $2 billion. You can see they're proposing to amend in an additional $323 million in OA in the amended budget, like Mr. Abel just asked about a few minutes ago with Josh, and an additional $353 million, which we will have to come up with a match for those funds. So you can see there's an additional match requirement of $71 million in the amended and $77 million. Over the 5-year period, we're looking at an additional a little bit over $400 million in additional match requirements over the 5 years potentially. But so that was the reason we decided to, until we get some more clarification from Congress on what the actual amounts are and what the match requirements are going to need, I thought it would be prudent for me to hold off to present the budget recommendation to you guys at a later time. There will be some changes to, as Josh mentioned, to the like the intermodal side of the house and the discretionary grant programs. But as Congress kind of works this through, we'll get more clarification as we go along. So I did want to share to you, even though I didn't have a budget for you to approve today, I did want to share the proposed recommended numbers that we did receive for our revenue for excise and fees.
Mr. Boswell?
Yes, Mr. Boswell. That was from the original base that was started last year, and the rideshare fees was $7 million, and that was put into the base. So for FY23, they're showing an increase in rideshare fees of $15 million. That comes to the department. There is a larger number that is greater than that. There's supplanted out other areas, but just for DOT, for our transit portion of it, this is $15 million.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Whitworth.
Thank you.
At this time now, I call on Carol Comer to give us an update on our rail program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Commissioner, and Matt. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to share with you some recent accomplishments and focus areas in our rail program. Just to always give a little framework for rail in the state of Georgia, we rank 7th nationally in the number of rail miles at just over 4,600 miles. We also have, at Gdot, we own 540 of those miles that are operated by our short line railroads. We also rank 8th nationally in the number of railroads that operate in Georgia. We have 28 railroads total, 26 are short lines that have operating revenues that are less than $35 million. And we have 2 Class 1 railroads who have operating revenues in excess of $450 million annually. We also have 2 inland ports in Cordele, Georgia, and Chatsworth, and also one under development in Gainesville. And those inland ports are an initiative of the Georgia Ports Authority. We also have passenger rail service provided by Amtrak at 5 stations in Georgia, and we also have 5 excursion railroads. New this year was the addition of the Azalea Sprinter excursion rail service that runs from Valdosta through Nashville and Willacoochee. Our first major accomplishment on the rail planning side of the house was the adoption of our state rail plan by FRA in early July. The state rail plan is required by FRA in order for Georgia to be eligible for any type of federal funding from their agency, and they also require that we update the plan every 4 years. The plan identified approximately $2.2 billion in needs over the planning horizon. The short-term needs in the first 5 years were $366 million, with $1.9 billion in the longer planning horizon to fund projects for planning, capital, and rehabilitation, both on public and private railroads. Our second major accomplishment was in early July as well. FRA issued a final environmental impact statement and record of decision for our Tier 1 EIS for the Atlanta to Charlotte passenger rail corridor. The project began identifying 6 alternatives that were further studied and then reduced down to 3 alternatives. The 3 alternatives included the Southern Crescent Southern Crescent Corridor, which is currently owned by Norfolk Southern and has Amtrak service on it. This will be a shared use rail corridor. They also identified a greenfield site that would track along the I-85 corridor and a more southerly corridor that was also a greenfield site. We held a very robust public and agency involvement program. We coordinated with North Carolina DOT, South Carolina DOT, I think 22 other public agencies across the corridor, and held 3 public meetings, one here in Atlanta, one in Charlotte, and one in Greenville, South Carolina last fall. We received a total of about 2,100 public comments, which is just an astonishing number when it comes to public hearings and comments. Very, very robust public involvement. And the commenters who did, when they commented, voiced a preference for any of the alternatives that we described, preferred the greenfield alternative. At the conclusion of the public involvement and submittal of our final document, DOT and FRA, based on the public input and also the environmental analysis of any impact, determined that the third alternative would be the greenfield corridor. And so when FAA signed the final environmental impact statement and record of decision in early July this year, that concluded this project. The next step to advance the project would be to complete a Tier 2 environmental impact study, which would complete the formal required environmental process. However, advancing a Tier 2 study is certainly contingent on the availability of funding. And Josh certainly has mentioned that there's potential for robust funding from FRA through the infrastructure package. Talk a little bit about our short line railroads. In the past 3 years, we have been able to invest $80 million to upgrade our short line railroads to handle 286,000-pound trains that can travel at speeds up to 25 miles an hour. Of that $80 million, $75 million was bond funds, and we were able to take $12 million of those bond funds and leverage that for some FRA CRISI grants in the amount of $7.5 million. And so it's important to underscore the need that we have to have state funds available to match opportunities for federal grants. And as I said, Josh mentioned in his presentation on the infrastructure bill, approximately $66 billion is a potential in FRA funding that we could be competitive with. It's also, we highlighted before, the impact of investment in our state-owned short lines as they directly support about 6,000 jobs in the agricultural, forest products, and industrial products industries. And these speed and capacity upgrades that we are making will provide increased competitiveness for these industries and also provide future opportunities for economic development in areas of rural Georgia. We'll just take a quick look at the investment that we've made along our 6 short lines. The first one is the Chattanooga and Chickamauga Railway. CCKY is the abbreviation for it. It's a lot easier to say. We've invested $12 million. Those projects are under contract, and when they are completed in the fall next year, the rail will be 100% compliant with the 286,000-pound requirements. For the Georgia-Florida Railroad, which is north of Valdosta, we've invested approximately $12.3 million to date for their 43 miles. And when those projects are completed in May of next year, we'll be at 54% compliant with the 286. For the Georgia Northeastern Railroad, we have invested $2.7 million. And that investment has been for rehabilitation of bridges and track on the existing rail. We have not begun the 286 upgrades. Obviously, we have a constrained amount of money, and so we prioritize the lines based on the volume of traffic. and number of customers that they served. And Georgia Northeastern was number 6 on our list, but they will be number 1 on our list when we receive additional funding to continue to complete the program. The Georgia Southwestern Railroad is about 100 miles. It's our second largest railroad. We've invested $18 million, and when these projects are completed in the middle of the year next year, those will be 100% 286 compliant. For the Heart of Georgia Railroad, this is our largest railroad at 219 miles, and to date we have invested $39 million for the 286 upgrades, which will bring it to 62% compliant, and those projects will be completed in late fall next year, I think around the December timeframe actually. And then the $39 million also included a small investment for the reactivation of the rail line from Midville, Georgia, down to Vidalia. And then last but not least, we have the Ogeechee Railroad, about approximately 22 miles of rail. We've invested $7.8 million there. Those projects are slated to be completed in May next year, and they will be, the rail will be 286 compliant with the completion of those projects. And as you can see, we've made significant upgrades that are underway, but we still have approximately 33% of the rail miles that we do not have funding for to complete the 286 upgrades. We estimate that cost to be about $35 million. And the state rail plan also identified approximately $40 million in an annual need for just rehabilitation for tracks and bridges on an ongoing basis. We have a couple current initiatives that are underway in the rail program. The first is our rail asset management program, where we are annually conducting bridge rating inspections on a third of our 151 railroad bridges. And this is to better inform and prioritize maintenance and rehabilitation funding needs. The inspection data for the bridges it's collected out in the field electronically in a cell phone app. And then that app feeds a database that we access in the office to be able to analyze the data and, again, prioritize those future projects and investment. Of the 53 bridges that we inspected this past year, there were 13 timber bridges that needed to be prioritized for rehabilitation. And it's interesting to note that 85% of the bridges on our system, on the rail system, are timber bridges. Only about 15% are steel. And I'd like to offer a special note to Trey Daniel, who's our Waterways Program Manager, but he stepped in due to some staffing shortages at the time to be the project manager for this project. And I'm always amazed at the flexibility and experience that our staff has across the division to work between the programs. Our last initiative that we'd like to highlight is we've talked a lot about the upgrades, the 286 upgrades. And so we are removing rail and replacing it with heavier gauge rail. The scrap rail that is left that we've removed actually has a pretty significant salvage value. So we're currently working with our Office of Procurement to sell that at fair market value. And we think over the life of the program, once we complete all the 286 upgrades, that we have the potential to have a surplus value of a little over $10 million in that material. So we're very excited about that and hope to be able to put that back into the program. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to conclude my remarks and answer any questions anyone may have.
Is there any questions on her report? Go ahead, Johnny.
Carol, the relationship with Hog Railroad and the major railroads getting into the inland port is a big problem for us there in the Coriel area with the inland port, having to offload in Port Wentworth and then trucking it into the port. If we could have a better relationship to get into the port, would be a big help to the Hog Railroad.
Yes, sir, we're aware of that, and, you know, certainly trying to facilitate some additional discussions between the owner of the hog and the Class 1 railroad that serves Cordele, absolutely.
You know Mr. Grantham? Yeah. You might call him.
Good idea. Thank you, Johnny, for that question. Carol, I got a question on the Atlanta-Charlotte. They picked, the route that they picked was the Greenfield?
Yes, sir.
Is that considered a new rail system?
It will be a new rail line.
A new rail line to Atlanta to Charlotte with certain stops along the way based on the information it shows, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your report. Great report.
Thank you.
You're welcome. At this time, I'll ask Ms. Meg Perkle, our Chief Engineer, to come forward with the State Route 400 express lanes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
Commissioner. I appreciate the opportunity to come to you today and provide an update on the State Route 400 Express Lanes P3 procurement. I'll give a quick project overview, a description of the procurement process, the results, and our next steps. Y'all have seen this slide many times. This is just a reminder that we're discussing the State Route 400 Express Lanes P3 project. P3 procurements are for this P3 project, the design and construction cost estimate was used as a basis for developing the assumed availability payments. As a reminder, the availability payments are like the annual mortgage payments that also include finance and maintenance of the project over a 35-year term. And this is in partnership with the private developer because they are financing the project. Funding for the availability payments are included in Gdot and the Atlanta Regional Commission's programmed funds for the 35-year maintenance term, approximately $85 million a year. P3 procurements are very complex and lengthy. We've held an industry forum where almost 200 industry partners attended and then conducted one-on-one meetings. 6 teams submitted statements of qualification in May of 2020, which included over 60 major team members. 3 teams were shortlisted last summer, and over the course of the last 11 months, the department's team worked closely with the shortlisted firms in pursuit of this highly competitive project. We received and responded to 96 alternative technical concepts from the 3 developer teams, and we've responded to over 1,500 proposer questions and 24 one-on-one meetings, and 2 proposals were received in May. So the 3 teams were shortlisted and were fully engaged up through May of 2021, and 2 proposals were received on May 25th, 2021. In the evaluation process, only one of those 2 proposals was determined to be responsive to the requirements set forth in the request for proposal. So let me walk you through the review and evaluation process we followed on this responsive proposal. This slide shows how we organize our review committees for P3 procurements. An intensive effort is made to evaluate and assess technical and price proposals, which starts with the developing of the evaluation criteria for the individual projects. The P3 steering committee reports to the board and provides oversight, guidance, and direction during the procurement, and is made up of the chair of the board's P3 committee, Kevin Abel, the commissioner, the director of planning, the P3 director, the treasurer, and the chief engineer. The P3 steering committee appoints Gdot employees from across the department to other committees shown here to undertake the evaluation process. In accordance with the P3 guidelines and the P3 manual, the selection review committee, with the assistance of various subcommittees, is charged with evaluating the proposals submitted for a P3 project using the criteria established in the request for proposals. This slide and the following show the robust evaluation process the proposal went through. First, our pass-fail reviews for requirements, and then staff and advisors perform in-depth technical reviews and financial reviews. Once the technical and financial reviews determine that the technical and financial proposals are sound, the SRC, the Selection Review Committee, recommends to proceed the opening of the price component of the proposal. Per Gdot's P3 manual, once the price component is opened, we go through a detailed bid validation process. Then the Selection Recommendation Committee evaluates the price component of the responsive proposals and presents its recommendations to the P3 Steering Committee. The P3 Steering Committee considers and votes on the recommendation received from the Selection Review Committee. As you can see, there's a great deal of complexity and rigor in our review of P3 proposals, much more complex than the bid review analysis we go through for most of our programs. A lot more difficult than just opening the bid and going through a bid review period. So we've gone through a lengthy and complex procurement process. Proposals submitted by any serious entity for such a long and costly endeavor include many things that the department must evaluate carefully. Thus, we apply appropriate time and process to evaluate. On July 13, the Selection Recommendation Committee confirmed that the MW400 team technical proposal achieved a qualifying score for each of the technical evaluation factors. On July 16th, the Selection Recommendation Committee reviewed and determined that the proposal passed the Phase 2 financial pass-fail criteria. On July 21, the Supervisory Subcommittee recommended to the Selection Recommendation Committee the outcomes of the bid validation process. The bid validation did not contain any inconsistencies. The Selection Recommendation Committee reviewed the recommendation and concurred. On August 16th, the Selection Recommendation Committee convened and considered a comparison between the price proposal and the programmed funding for the project. I'd like to explain that the price proposal submitted by the developer is deemed a trade secret. It's proprietary by the developer and cannot be shared publicly. This is not uncommon in P3 project bids. Each developer has their own unique approach to how they deliver and finance and maintain the project, and they don't want to reveal the details to their competitors. The proposer, MW400 Partners, provided a price proposal which far exceeds the programmed funding for the project. Therefore, the Selection Recommendation Committee and subsequently the P3 Steering Committee has determined the MW400 Partners price proposal should be rejected and the current procurement process for the SR400 Express Lanes project be canceled. Further, a notice will be issued to the developer and a summary of the notice will be posted to the Georgia Procurement Registry. This determination was based in part on the amount by which the price proposal exceeded the programmed funding for the project, and that the implementation of the project based on this proposal would not meet the state's strategic goals and investment policies, and the proposal would not be advantageous to the state. Now, if any of you have gone to buy a 2x4 or some lumber at Home Depot in the last few months, you know that prices have escalated for some construction materials during the pandemic. The proposals for this project were received in May, during the height of sort of this unusual COVID economy. But even considering the current market conditions and volatility, material cost escalation, especially for steel and cement, and supply chain disruptions, the price proposal received was substantially higher than anticipated in our project budget. It's not unprecedented for the department to reject a price proposal. You see that every month when Albert presents the results of last month's letting. It's important to note that while Gdot is canceling the current procurement process, the SR400 Express Lanes project itself is not canceled. This is a very important project to Georgia, and we've got tremendous inertia to keep this project moving toward delivery. It's in the ARC plan and the TIP, and we have an approved federal environmental document that validates the need for this project. We've coordinated with the ATL and MARTA on future BRT, Express Lane Transit, in the corridor, and we're committed to seeing this project delivered. Gdot is also obligated to remain good stewards of the taxpayer dollars and is constantly focused on fiscal responsibility. The SR400 Express Lanes project is still an important priority for Georgia, and our goal is to build and maintain infrastructure that ensures the most cost-efficient way possible. While the schedule is obviously going to be impacted for the Georgia 400 project, it's too soon to determine the exact impacts on the schedule and timeline at this time, and we will get back with you as soon as we know. And you may also be wondering how this decision will impact timing on various other P3 procurements like 285 and other MMIP projects. We're doing a holistic review of the schedules and timing of procurements and intend to preserve the currently projected timing to the extent possible, and we'll provide updates as soon as they're available. We thank those who have participated in the procurement of the project so far and appreciate their commitment to the state of Georgia. We anticipate providing an update on the next steps in the near future. Now I'll turn it over to Chair of the P3 Steering Committee, Kevin Abel, for comments and board action.
Thank you, Meg. You know, to my fellow board members, I'll say that, you know, Meg's presentation was very clear and professional and you know, bullet point driven. But I want you all to know that I've been involved on the periphery of this project, you know, from the day I got on this board through today, the last 2+ years. You know, kind of witnessed what's happening inside of Gdot, both Gdot employees and consultants working on this project. And I can say that there's been a tremendous amount of blood, sweat, and tears put into this process. The planning, the design, the environmental work, dealing with constituents who live along the route, you know, changes to design to accommodate, you know, concerns. The procurement process itself has gone on for approximately 2 years. This is, you know, obviously a very upsetting point in the cycle, you know, and it's not lost on me, and I want everyone here on the board to recognize, you know, just how hard these folks have worked on this and how important it is to them as well as to us, as well as to the citizens of Georgia, that this project succeed, and succeed it will. It's just going to be delayed as we assess the procurement process and find a new way forward. So I just wanted to offer those comments and embedded in those comments our sincere thanks and appreciation to Meg and to Tim Matthews and to all of the staff and consultants who have worked so very hard on this project. The project is not over. As Meg said, I just want to reiterate that this is the cancellation of a procurement for reasons that are necessary and obviously in line with the fiscal and strategic responsibilities of Gdot as it relates to making the best decisions for the state. So with that said, let me first, before I we have to, as a board, make a motion to affirm the decision that was made, the recommendations that were made by the P3 Steering Committee a couple of days ago. But before I do that, let me just, you know, see if anyone has any questions or comments or additional comments before we go forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
First, let me express my disappointment that it didn't work out the way we had hoped, but also I'm encouraged that we're not giving up on this, and nor should we need to. And thank you for the work. And Kevin, I appreciate what you've done. I've sat in your position before as it relates to the Northwest Corridor, and that had a different ending. So I can appreciate where you're coming from and all the effort you've put into it. I do have one quick question based on your presentation on the pricing. I understand that they consider their pricing proprietary. No, I personally don't have a problem with that. I'm curious, when we made our price estimates, because I think you referenced they started submitting their pricing around May of this year when prices were just out insane volatility. When did we make our original estimates? How long before they submitted their pricing did we make our original estimates?
It was some months before, and we considered that. I mean, we considered, even with market volatility and everything that's been going on, that maybe our estimate was a little bit low. But given that, we still couldn't get to the
right.
level that they were.
My quick follow-up to that is, since they came in where they did, or even if they came in close to our estimates, knowing the volatility we've just experienced and we can't predict the future, do we allow some type of cost or pricing flexibility during the ongoing life of this project to account for events like we just experienced and are still in the midst of?
Not typically, no.
Okay.
The bid is the bid.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion, and I'm just going to read this so I get it right. My glasses on. Okay, so we need a motion to affirm the recommendations of the P3 Steering Committee on August 17th, 2021 regarding Meridian Welsh 400 Partners, that's MW 400P, their proposal and the current procurement process for the SR 400 Express Lanes project. The recommended actions are as follows. MW 400P's proposal is to be rejected, and the current procurement process for the project is to be canceled, and a notice regarding those two items to be issued to MW 400P, and a summary of the notice be posted to the Georgia Procurement Registry.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye to this motion. Aye.
Yeah.
Ayes have it. Motion carries. At this time now, we'll have Meg, you're going to give us an update on the rule here.
Good morning again.
On the 672 rule, -1, is that correct?
672-11.
Oh, 11s. I've got to get my glasses, yeah.
So thank you for allowing me to speak today about the proposed changes to the board rule regarding right-of-way use fees for utilities. I'm going to cover the following here that you see here and do my best to answer your questions. I'll give a refresher on why we charge fees and why we're making this change now, a quick review of the proposed changes, and a review of the comments received during the public comment period. Just as a reminder, state law gives Gdot the authority to develop rules for the management of utilities in the right-of-way. Just in case anyone wonders, what gives you the right to do this? And the current rule was adopted in the mid-1980s, so it's been almost 40 years since we've made a change to this rule. Federal law makes it clear that states have the authority to manage the public right-of-way and charge fair and reasonable compensation for allowing telecom providers to use the public right-of-way. This is exactly what we are trying to do. We don't need to charge any more or less. We are not trying to make money. Gdot charges a fee because we're administering a program where private for-profit companies are using public right-of-way that was acquired with tax dollars for transportation use. We allow them to use the public right-of-way. There is no easement for them to purchase. Fees collected allow us to administer the utility program. Considering the constitutional restrictions on the use of state motor fuel proceeds, there are concerns about subsidizing the utilities program with motor fuel funds. If we administer this program with motor fuel tax dollars, it takes away from projects the department delivers. I want to be clear that the department does not charge a fee to make extra money or a profit. We're a state agency. We can't make a profit. When private companies use the state right-of-way, they are making a profit from the use of the public rights-of-way. If they do that for free year after year in Georgia, that's considered a gratuity. It's not right to use motor fuel tax dollars to administer the program and ask the public to pay for something that private companies are benefiting from. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the utilities program and what is involved in that. Why do we charge a fee? We charge right-of-way use fees for utility permits to administer the utility program statewide. The first responsibility of the utility program is handling the permitting and inspection of utilities in the state right-of-way. This includes administration of applications. We get about 14,000 a year, which results in about 9,000 approved permits per year. This requires a detailed and thorough analysis by engineering technical staff and consultants to approve, plus oversight during construction. We maintain a web-based permitting system that allows applications online and keeps an accurate inventory of current permits. The goal for permit approval is 5 days. During 2020, the average turnaround time was about 3 days, and I can assure you that companies that submit high volumes of permits annually appreciate this good customer service. Once they have a permit, they can maintain their facilities in the right-of-way without any additional permits, just coordination for lane closures. We also have a lot of project utility coordination on our projects. So during active project management, we are concerned with what utilities are in the right-of-way. Because we have about 1,700 active projects in design and right-of-way, utility certifications are required prior to moving into construction on all Gdot projects. Utility coordination during design is a major part of project development, and federal law requires that we certify this coordination has occurred prior to authorizing funds for construction. Good coordination is also a service we provide to utility companies. The goal of utility coordination is to avoid impacting the utilities with our projects, and this is always the goal, whether or not they are there by permit. We want to try to avoid them. And finally, the utility program helps manage utility coordination during construction. We have a very low level of utility delays on construction. We're probably the only state in the nation that can say that. And this is because we have a great program of managing coordination prior to and during construction. For those that would question the cost of administering our utilities program, I'll say that they're in line with the size of our program and the size of our growing state. We have good management of our utilities program, and we use consultants, making it very scalable. We have a very lean permitting staff, and our utilities program is augmented with consultants, so it is scalable month to month and year to year as demand changes. Nationally, we're a good example of a well-run and efficient utility program. So putting things into context, I told you we get about 14,000 permit applications per year. For a typical year, only about 16% of those are for telecom communications permits. The remainder are for power, gas, and water. Those are the bulk of our utility permits. In 2020, we received 8,700 permits, and about 1,400 of those were for telecoms. There are no proposed changes to the permitting rules related to non-communications utilities. We've also been meeting with the Department of Community Affairs and the Georgia Technology Authority to stay informed on the state's efforts to expand broadband deployment. We don't want to inhibit the expansion of broadband to unserved areas. We've all learned through the pandemic how important that is, and DCA and GTA are supportive of our efforts to modernize these fees. So here's a reminder of what is in the proposed rule. We're proposing to change some of the definitions. There are now 3 tracks. And because the original rule was put in place when telecom meant long-distance trunkline utilities, and since that time we've had cable TV introduced to the market as well as internet service providers. And they didn't start out as traditional utilities, but now they're all in the right-of-way, and so the fees need to be more homogenized like these providers are. The modernization of the rules is long overdue. The industry has greatly changed, and with it, increased deployment of broadband fiber, so it's important that the fees are the same for all. Fiber is fiber. So we've upgraded the definitions to clarify the difference between non-communications utilities and communications utilities. And this allows us to streamline and modernize, reflecting the increased homogenization of data communications. The concept of a wireless facility within communications facilities is a new one, reflecting the increased lower impact wireless facility installations. Gdot encourages co-location on existing facilities. The board rule will allow a 25% discount for co-located facilities. And we know that the permit fee will be reduced by 25% to encourage this. This simplifies future interactions with utilities and, if aerial, greatly improves safety. But it doesn't reduce Gdot's workload to approve and manage the application and the permit for each company in the right-of-way. We know there are concerns with the provisions in the board rules for EMCs. We are trying to track with the legislature to allow EMCs to provide broadband. The proposed board rule language clarifies what EMCs are and that they already pay right-of-way use fees if they are in our right-of-way. The rule also makes it clear that EMCs will not be charged twice for a permit in the same location. If they are permitted in a location for power, we will not charge them again to add broadband to the same location. State law allows them to provide both power and broadband. Once we clear a location for a permit, they pay permit fees, but we don't need to make them pay twice for one location. What Gdot needs for our purposes is to clear the location for the utility and to know which companies are out at each location. There's no additional cost to Gdot to manage the permit if the EMC installs broadband under an existing permit. So what matters to us is that it doesn't matter if they are placed at the same time, but what we need to know is which customer is in which location. Finally, the proposed rule defines something new, wireless facilities. These are single location antennas needed for 5G. Note there's a 500-foot allowance that allows them to connect to other trunk lines, and this is greater than the previous allowance of 100 feet. And this will be updated in our utility adjustment manual, which is like our design guide for utilities in the right-of-way. So ask why a permit is needed for each node instead of, say, like a 2-mile permit to imply nodes within that 2-mile section. Because this is a device with size and weight on a pole, it has safety implications that need to be tracked individually. And further, especially if they're installing new poles, we need to make sure that pole spacing is in accordance with the utility adjustment manual. So this slide shows the current fee structure, and I'll talk a little bit about why it needs to be modernized. For end-user service telecom and cable providers, they're paying $294 per permit per year. For long-haul telecommunication providers, they're paying a per-mile fee, up to $5,000 per mile per year in urban areas, and then $1,000 or $2,000 in rural areas, depending on the volume of traffic on the roadway. When these fees were established decades ago, there was a difference in the services that these companies were providing, but now they're all transmitting the same thing. So companies that were historically end-user focused are now getting into long distance and vice versa. So while some of these companies started merging, they were asking, why are we paying different fees for basically the same infrastructure? And that's exactly why it's time to modernize, and the stage is set for a simplification of the fee structure. So what is proposed? This slide is a reminder of the proposed fees, which are proposed to now include an application fee and an annual fee. These fees are presumably reasonable in consideration of our costs. The application fee is $742 if the application is for less than 1 mile in length or for a wireless facility. It's $1,400 if the application is for more than 1 mile in length. Existing permits will not pay an application fee. The average permit length is about half a mile, and if a permit is granted, the annual permit would be paid the next year, $300 per permit for a communications utility. So for those who are paying $294, this is a $6 increase. For those who are paying the per mile fees, this is a great reduction, but it brings them all in line. It's $270 for a wireless facility, which is the FCC recommended amount. The overarching premise here is that there will only be one fee paid in a given year. So the application fee would be in the first year, and then the subsequent year would start the annual fee. The annual fee covers the ongoing costs associated with the program. To do otherwise would put 100% of the burden on new permit applications, which is not fair or sustainable. So how did we calculate the application fee? Basically, we took the employee positions at Gdot in the utilities, we looked at their annual salaries, and we applied this for a 1 mile permit, looking at the number of hours needed to review the application and the inspection during construction. So for shorter permits, the $1,400 value was adjusted to the average permit length of half a mile. This is a reasonable approximation of the cost to process a permit application. The $300 annual permit fee is a low amount that easily passes the reasonable test and was developed to help cover the balance of overall cost of the office, considering the nearly 191,000 person hours that it takes to operate the utilities program. We do not think we are charging too much. These are very reasonable fees. So let's get into the details of the comments received on the proposed changes. So comments from GMA and various cities. We received 10 comments from out of the 538 cities in Georgia. We know they have concerns, and GMA and Gdot have been working together on a solution. We understand that Gdot's business model of managing utilities on 18,000 miles of right-of-way is very different from how a city manages their assets and franchise fees. And we support separation from the cities from the Gdot rates. At an upcoming board meeting, we'll propose an amendment of the rules to delay the date that this will apply to the cities. And this will give GMA an opportunity to continue to use the per mile rate through the next legislative session and seek legislative changes to untie its rates from Gdot's fees. We received many comments about the calculation of annual fees, and you can see the comments at the top and the responses at the bottom of the slide. To address concerns regarding annual fees, we feel the annual fees are just, reasonable, very predictable, and non-discriminatory. Gdot's auditors will perform an audit at least every 5 years to make sure these fees are commensurate with Gdot Utilities' programmatic costs. We also do an annual budget. We'll know if we are collecting more than we need because we have an annual budget for the utilities program. Elimination of the annual fee would require a substantial increase in the application fee for Gdot to recover the program costs. And the principle of the annual fee is to cover the ongoing costs associated with the program. To do otherwise would put 100% of the burden on new permit applications. Any proposal for an application fee would not be fair in that scenario. Rates are proposed to be reduced per the Senate committee findings and recommendations. In 2018, the Senate requested the Georgia Department of Transportation to review their current fee structure to ensure fees are reasonable, predictable, and non-discriminatory across users of the right-of-way, based on cost and overseeing the use of the right-of-way, and in the aggregate do not result in the recovery of more than the actual incurred costs. And that's what we're proposing. We received comments about existing utility agreements. Regarding concerns on existing utility agreements, as has always been the case, all agreements are subject to production under the Open Records Act. There is no need to repeat the provisions of the Open Records Act in these rules. We are responding to a request from FNA now on these agreements. So if people want to see the agreements, they just need to ask. Gdot is not terminating any contracts. Nothing about any board action today impairs existing agreements. These agreements will remain in full force and effect if desired by both parties. If there is a fee schedule set forth in the contract, it will remain. Fees in any agreement must be based on a reasonable approximation of the average cost to Gdot associated with the administration of the permits. Per the rules, the average cost for administration of the permits, including inspection and continued occupancy of the right-of-way, this allows them to work in the right-of-way. We have about 5 main categories of agreements. It's not like everyone has a standalone, separate, different agreement. So these are very standardized agreements. We received comments about the waiver to EMCs for the broadband internet access service. And they state that we would be in violation of U.S. Code Section 253. In regard to that, this 47 U.S.C. 253 applies only to telecommunication services, not information services such as broadband. Therefore, it's inapplicable. And there are no additional costs to Gdot associated with the addition of broadband on a EMC permit that is already in the right-of-way. This is because EMC is already paying right-of-way use fees. We received comments about the waiver to access for schools and hospitals. For the same reason I just discussed with EMCs, this waiver does not discriminate. This waiver will not be expanded. It only applies where the sole purpose of the permit is to provide broadband internet access to a hospital or school. This is a very tiny percentage of our permits. We received comments about the proposed audit. The Gdot will perform the audit at least every 5 years. It could be more. And again, remember that we do an annual budget that will keep us aware of fees and our cost in the utilities program. If the fees require adjustment, either by increasing or decreasing, and this would only be for new permits moving forward, but we would have to go through this same rulemaking process. We cannot arbitrarily adjust the fees. Only the board rule can adjust the fees. Gdot will not retroactively seek refunds or additional money from any utility when there are fee changes made. We received comments about co-location. And again, we support co-location. But just remember that this is for two different owners and two different operators. There are still costs incurred by Gdot in managing multiple different utilities in the same trench or same pole, and that's why the fees were reduced and not eliminated. We received comments from cable TV providers saying that the passage of these fees would violate the Cable Act, as well as Georgia Code, which provides that franchise fees paid by cable operators should be in lieu of any other fees. So keep in mind that what they're talking about here are fees that apply to one-way TV video only. So we already comply with federal and state law regarding cable TV providers, and we will continue to do so. So if the line is for TV video only, they are not subject to the annual fee now, and they will not be. But let's be very clear, very few of these lines are for TV video only. The cable companies have agreements in place establishing our compliance with these laws, and they will remain in place. So this wraps up the summary of the comments received during the comment period. And as you may recall, this is the third time in the last 2 years that we have opened the board rules to modernize the right-of-way use fees. The first time we presented a higher application fee. The second time we maintained the per mile fees, and both times we received a lot of feedback that led us to say we need to go back to the drawing board, and we did not recommendation. But because we've done a lot of work here, we think we have reached the right balance, and that leads us to where we are today. We've worked carefully, deliberately, and over multiple years to listen to all the stakeholders and arrive at the compromise under consideration currently. We understand they still have concerns. We have to look at the approach for the entire state. We think we've struck the correct balance. We're proposing reasonable fees to review and approve permits and manage utilities in the public right-of-way. We will not collect more than the cost of the utilities program, and we'll perform an audit at least every 5 years of the program to ensure good management of the fees and evaluate that collections are only covering costs. I recognize that this is not an easy change, and probably not a perfect change. Nothing is ever perfect. However, this decades-old rule needs to be updated to reflect the current nature of our telecommunications infrastructure. Delaying in search of the perfect would mean that the $5,000, $2,000, $1,000 per mile fee structure remains the rule. Members of the General Assembly for the last few years have been encouraging the State Transportation Board to update this rule to ensure a more balanced fee structure. Mr. Chair, I will ask for your favorable consideration for adoption of these proposed changes.
Thank you, Meg. The chair will entertain a motion to put this on the floor for approval. We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a second on we're going to have comments, so we're just getting it on the, we've got a second. Now, is there any questions? Okay. Jeff?
Thank you, Meg, for that explanation and good job on presenting all this and all the work on this. Just a couple of questions came up during your presentation that didn't come up beforehand. And this question relates to local governments, and you may have addressed it in there and it just passed me, but state right-of-way that runs through local jurisdictions, I should know this answer, but I either forgot or never knew it, but state right-of-way that runs through municipalities and counties, do they currently have a right to collect fees for themselves on state right-of-way? And if so, are those fees subject to what we dictate?
So that goes back to the comments received from GMA and the cities. Cities can collect franchise fees for telecommunications in their city. So that is, right now, by law, it is tied to our fees. And so the concern from GMA is that they want to be separated from being tied to our fees so that their franchise fees are not based on what the rates are that Gdot is charging.
And the kind of the second part of that question, when on local right-of-ways, are they subject to our rules on their own local right-of-ways?
Yes.
Okay. And one last question, and I think you one of your bullet points touched on this, but I'm going to ask this question in the way of an example. If a private for-profit provider is able to work out an arrangement with an EMC to run broadband, and that EMC is currently not doing it, in that scenario, would that private provider have to pay a fee, even though the EMCs already have a presence in the right-of-way?
If they are the EMC affiliate, then no.
Now, what do you mean by affiliate? Because could that mean partner, or is that like a subsidiary company of an EMC?
So basically, if the permit is in the EMC's name and they've hired this private company to do the work for them to install it as an affiliate, then they will not be paying the fees because the EMC is already paying the fees for the permit in the right-of-way.
Okay, I think the point is if this private broadband company they're not affiliated with EMC, they're just a partner, maybe leasing the space from the EMC. They have their own, they're making their own money separate from the EMC in this example.
Then they would have to pay.
Okay.
Johnny, Mr. Floyd, you have a question?
Yeah, Meg, you and I have discussed this quite a bit and familiar with it. I have a situation in my area of Southwest Georgia where you might run 1.5 miles or 2 miles and serve 2 houses on broadband or something, you know, and you got to pay the fees to use that 2 miles of right-of-way and all. The EMC, they run electricity down there, whatever, they don't pay anything. We in Crisp County, we don't have Georgia Power, we don't have EMC, we own our own generation and distribution facility. And we're not included in this. So we would be charged a fee for every time we hit the state right-of-way or what. And it's just about prohibitive to run broadband in the rural areas of the county. And that's my concern, that none of the states joining Georgia have this. Georgia is in the center here, and we want, I know it's money and it's fees, and I looked at your presentation and Meg's presentation, fees are a big thing, and this is a generation of fees, but it's prohibitive just about for broadband in rural Georgia.
And you know, when we spoke, Mr. Floyd, the gentleman we spoke with, he didn't install that broadband because it was going to cost him $20,000 a year. He was going to have to pay $5,000 a mile. So if you look at what we're proposing, it would be $300 a year.
I can't.
It's a great reduction in the expected, in the example that we talked about down in Crisp County. So either way, what we're proposing is a great reduction in the proposed fees, because right now they're currently paying $5,000 a mile in Cordele because it's an urban area.
And broadband in rural Georgia, when you might not. Here in the metro area, you might go 2 blocks and pick up 50 apartments or something, you know, and get, and down there you might run 2 or 3 miles and pick up 3 or 4 houses. It's just about prohibited.
Commissioner.
I just was going to follow on to Mr. Floyd's comment, to point of clarification. The EMCs do pay a permit fee, and so does your Crisp Power. They do pay a permit fee for access to the right-of-way. So Meg's point is, again, this is a great reduction of from a $5,000 per mile in a rural area to $300 for as many miles as they want to go in one county on one state route. So this is greatly reduced, and trying to encourage that very challenge that you articulate. We're very aware of trying to, the cost benefit of trying to serve rural Georgia. So we see this as obviously an enhancement and a great reduction in cost that would encourage more development of broadband in unserved area.
Kevin?
So, someone smarter than me said you can't please all the people all the time, but you can please some of the people some of the time. This is clearly a complex issue, and I have dived into it. We were contacted early in the last month or so by the Fiber Network Alliance. I sat in on a Senate committee hearing, felt like I was educating myself on the issues. I feel like the Gdot staff has done an incredible job over what sounds to be a very long period of time, trying to please all the people all the time and getting as close as possible to that. My concern here is one of board governance. We're asked to, approve this rule, and the comment period, the formal comment period closed at, I believe, 5 o'clock on Monday. And we, board members, received considerable number of pages of documentation of these comments from many different companies, including the ones I had heard from previously and many that I hadn't heard from previously, including the likes of AT&T and Cox and various other large communications providers. I'll admit I haven't read all 100 pages, but I tried to, look at what I was reading. But today at the board meeting, Meg, you presented us with a summary of those comments and, Gdot's, staff's responses to them, all of which sound very reasonable. But it's a lot of information you just flew through in 5 slides over here, and I feel that we're being asked to vote on this board rule under a very limited amount of time to process the comments, from a formal comment period. And my request to the board, again, in the name of good governance, is what do we lose by waiting till the next board meeting to consider this rule, giving ourselves a few more days to process more diligently the comments that have been presented to us? My instinct is that I will support this board rule. Again, I've asked a lot of questions along the way, and the answers here seem very reasonable. But again, I believe that the right approach is to ponder a little bit more judiciously these comments and render a vote on them a month from now. So that is my request to the board.
Mr. Chairman?
We got a motion on the floor.
I know.
I'll give you one minute.
Well,
1 minute.
As part of a parliamentary procedure, I would like to propose an amendment. I guess I don't know the right terminology I'm trying to think of, but an amendment to the recommendation that's on the table. And my proposal is that based on Kevin's wording, that we postpone this vote until the next board meeting to give us all time who's interested to disseminate through all the comments that were made. And I make that in the form of a motion.
We have a motion. We have a second.
And that motion is to postpone this to next meeting.
Do an amendment. There's an amendment on the floor. There's a motion and a second to postpone this vote. So we have to vote on the amendment first.
Right.
And what we will do by roll call, and Matt will do the roll call on the amendment for postpone it till next meeting. Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Okay. Again, on the motion to amend to postpone District 1.
No.
District 2. Mr. Floyd.
Yes, postpone.
District 3. Mr. Carricker.
Yes.
District 4.
No.
District 5. District 5, Ms. Key. District 6.
Yes.
District 8, Mr. Golden.
Yes.
District 9, Ms. Dunn.
No.
District 10, Mr. Buzzell.
No.
District 11, Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
District 12.
Yes.
District 13. Ms. Lemon is on the phone, but she's unable to use audio, and she expressed her support for this, for passing, so she would be a no. In District 14, Mr. Sheeran.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was trying to hit the unmute button and I hung up by mistake. What are we voting on right now?
All right, right now, there's a motion on the floor to amend, to postpone the initial motion until next month's board meeting. So this is the motion to postpone it to next month.
Okay, so, and I think that's parliamentarily incorrect. You can't make a motion during the discussion of another motion. But even if you could, I made the initial motion to approve the new board rule. So whatever it takes for me to support my initial motion is how I'm voting, because I'm sorry, I missed so much of this conversation.
All right. Just to clarify, that would be a no to postpone the initial motion. This is the sub-motion that we're voting on now, or the amendment to the motion, so that would be a no.
It's a no, and I don't think there's such thing in Robert's Rules of Order as a sub-motion, but anyway, go ahead.
Okay. And Mr. Bowen, it's currently tied, so your vote.
I'm moving forward, I'm on a vote no.
So I've got 7-6 to not approve the motion to amend and move forward with the main motion.
Point of question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
There was one vote that the secretary articulated that we didn't actually hear from the member, and the secretary expressed made the expression on behalf of the member. I'm just, is authority there to express that without actually hearing from the member?
So,
via text, Ms. Lemon says, no, do not postpone.
Well, my question is, and I appreciate her, right? My question is that an acceptable form based on how this meeting is? We have people here in person and we have people expressing a live audible sound on this. Is that an acceptable way to present a vote?
As far as me personally, yes, as far as the chair.
and I would say since she's on the telephone and both audibly and through text is the same device, I would think that it would be. I would also note for this motion in particular, even without that vote, it would be a tie, which means it would fail.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Say motion carried. So, any other questions? We'll go on to the next item.
You need action on the original motion.
Yeah, so the original motion is still pending.
Okay.
The motion
Okay.
to approve the,
Okay. So we'll go back through and vote again. Is that what you're
That's
saying?
correct.
On the original motion of approving the broadband as has been presented here by Ms. Perkle. Okay?
so just to be clear, this is a motion to approve the proposed amendments. District 1?
Yes.
District 2, Mr. Floyd? District 3?
Yes.
District 4? Yes. District 5? Ms. Key? District 6?
Yes.
District 8? Mr. Golden?
Yes. Sorry, yes.
District 9, Ms. Dunn? Yes. District 10? Mr. Booth? District 11, Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
District 12, Mr. Morris?
Yes.
District 13, again, Ms. Lemon's not able to do audibly, she texted in. District 14, Mr. Sheeran?
Yes.
The ayes have it, there's, in fact, no no's,
So motion carries. Any other questions? Okay, now we're going to the next item, which will be the I-16 bridge update. Brad Sexton.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, commissioner, council. You got me clicked up there, so appreciate the opportunity to be before you today to provide a brief recap and a little bit of an update on moving forward with the I-16 State Route 86 bridge incident. As you can see from the pictures, the bridge was struck early morning, July 15th. That had been last month's board meeting day, shortly after midnight, and then telephones started ringing all over Georgia and even mine in Ohio. It rang early on that morning. So that was struck about midnight. So immediately you can see the impact shifted that bridge structure over 6 feet. On the right, you can see where that beam used to sit on that little piece of steel stem plate there. And that was the impact that moved the bridge. So obviously immediately I-16 was closed between exits 71 and 78. District forces went into action immediately, putting in a detour. Assessment began immediately on what to do with the bridge. The initial question was, can we put it back where it was, or will it have to be removed? And that assessment took place overnight, and actually by the time most people were getting to work Thursday morning, that decision was made while they were still probably getting their first cup of coffee. So early Thursday morning, the decision was made we would need to remove the structure. As you can see here, the demo began shortly after lunch. Our contract partners mobilized to the scene that morning and began the work after lunch that day. Our partners being, in this case, C.W. Matthews, D.H. Griffin, McClendon Enterprises, Curtin Brothers, Middle Georgia Signs, and as you can see in the loop here of the video, that's D.H. Griffin using a very specialized piece of equipment to grab that steel beam, and you see him set it down right there, and then he'll cut it in two in one swoop. So it's a pretty amazing piece of equipment. Not everyone has those laying around, and the fact that we could get that there that quick and begin this work is absolutely amazing. So kudos to our partners who come to our aid, and you can see on the right that work continued into the night, Thursday night. So the demo continued through Friday at 2:15 a.m. Friday morning, roughly, just over 24 hours after the bridge was struck. It was completely on the ground, and then cleanup continued throughout Friday to remove all that debris and then also make the roadway safe for reopening. So westbound was open at 5 p.m. By 5 p.m. on July 16th, with the eastbound was open shortly before 8 p.m., which means that this bridge was removed and the roadway safely opened back to the public use in less than 44 hours after the bridge strike. Now, one of the interesting things that come out of this incident is obviously communication plays a big piece when you have a closure like this. I just want to share some statistics on the communication outreach that took place during this event. It was important immediately to begin putting out information about the detour, the expected timelines, et cetera, of what was happening on I-16. Gdot's District 2 began issuing information via social media in the early hours after the incident, and initially, obviously, was to relay the closure and detour information. Of course, the news media came calling. We deliberately targeted not only nearby local media, but the major markets touched by the interstate network, including Atlanta, Macon, and Savannah. The story even got picked up in the national media, including CNN. Traditional media truly helped us broadcast the message far and wide, but they also closely monitored the D2 social media feeds for updates. They even included screenshots of Gdot's tweets in their online coverage. We saw some unbelievable numbers on social media during this event. So during this event, over that 2-day period, D2's content on social media, Twitter impressions were just over 1.7 million, over 300,000 Twitter engagements. The Facebook audience reach was 14.7 million. Facebook shares were about 100,000. And during that 2 days, we picked up an additional 10,000 Facebook followers after they saw our information being posted. So, But kudos, I want to give kudos especially, not only Office of Strategic Communications here, but especially to Kyle Collins at D2, who was on scene providing those updates and a lot of those pictures and footage you saw here. So just next steps and some thank yous. So obviously, Albert asked y'all to take action on letting this as soon as possible. Just a note of that is the design work is being done now. It's not as simple as putting back the bridge that was there. Design standards have changed significantly since, so there is a design effort. We just can't dust off those plans from the 70s and put it back up. So that work's ongoing and it'll be completed, you know, post haste. So that's well in the works. But Governor Kemp was on site that Friday afternoon, and there's a little press clipping from that where he showed his appreciation. And with that, I also want to say thanks, you know, to District 2 and their team. Corporate Rentals, the district engineer, was there with the governor. Y'all might have saw his sound bites. His major players in this was his assistant, of course, Kedrick Collins in traffic ops with the detour maintenance folks, obviously putting in detour also, and all the things they had to do to close on State Route 86 and 16, and also his construction office for helping monitor the removal. But I promised him I wouldn't steal all his thunder because he's going to come before y'all in the near future, and he'll tell you all the behind the scenes and all the effort it took to make this happen. So. And I also need a big thanks, State Bridge Office, State Maintenance Office, State Construction Office. You know, these things are a complete team effort. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my comments for today.
Thank you, Brad, for that update. At this time now, we'll have our commissioner's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board. It's a pleasure to be in front of you today on a very robust board meeting. We'll start where we always do with state fund collections. For July 21, $160.836 million. Breakdown on that was, $178.07 million in total. The breakdown was $160.8 in excise, $17.23 million in transportation fees. I always have been giving you comparisons as we relate to last year at this time. That's an increase in motor fuel of 6.4%, a 61% increase in hotel fees, and a 37.6% increase in highway impact fees. Now, the reason those look robust is a year ago we were still in the pandemic, coming out of it pretty nicely, I might add, but still we're in that mix. So as we compare back to 2019 calendar year, that means that we were about $9.5 million ahead in collections last month than we were in July of 2019, which was pre-COVID, to give you some comparison, which is, again, a positive indicator that traffic is up and obviously the consumption is up. Now let me move into our employment figures. We have 3,535 full-time employees. We have 83 temporary maintenance staff. We hired last month 38 employees and separated 47 employees. And so again, 3,535 full-time staff. Our procurement report for professional services, 200 contracts valued at $112.7 million for engineering, design, right-of-way, and geotechnical needs. Were advanced last month. And now let me get into a couple of projects that opened to traffic since we were together last month. We'll start down in Gdot District 5, Congressional District 1, which was a capital construction capacity adding project on State Route 144 from Timber Road just south of Belfast River Road, about 4.5 miles of projects, including replacing a bridge and approaches across the creek. You can see a nice roundabout as well. The contractor was APAC Atlantic. This project opened to traffic on July 22nd. Represents a $38.6 million capital investment for capacity adding there in Bryan County. Also now, moving into the next project was in Congressional District 8, Turner County, which is Gdot District 4, and obviously a project with great connectivity to I-75, which widened a little over about three-quarters of a mile of State Route 107, which is also State Route 112, from the interstate westwards. to Thompson Road. The contractor was Reeves Construction Company. It opened the 1st of July. Represents a $4.5 million capital investment amount, again, for capacity adding that intersects there right at the interstate ramps. And this project was completed ahead of schedule, as well as the one last in Bryan County I mentioned, failed to mention that. Let's move on into Congressional District 9 and Gdot District 1. This was for construction of 2 bridges and their approaches on State Route 332 over Walnut Creek and Walnut Creek Overflow in Jackson County. The contractor was Georgia Bridge and Concrete, replaced the bridges that were built in 1960, opened to traffic on July 13th, represents a $4.7 million capital bridge replacement investment to replace these old and deficient bridges. Speaking of bridges, we'll move into our next projects, which these are really neat projects. Low impact design build bridge project replacements. That's a mouthful. Low impact means that we had low environmental impact and right-of-way impact, and we work with local government such that the bridges can be closed or the roads can be closed while the bridges can be replaced quickly. This represents 6 bridges in Catoosa, Douglas, Elbert, Polk, Walker, and Walton counties. That's GDOT's District 1, 6, and 7, and Congressional Districts 9, 10, 13, and 14. There were 2 bridges in District 1, GDOT District 1. There were 3 bridges in GDOT District 6 and 1 in GDOT District 7. The contractor was Wright Brothers Construction, and Neil Schaefer was our engineer of record on this great project. The first bridge was open to traffic in April of this year, and the final bridge opened July 15th of this year. Represents a $12.5 million investment. Again, design build, low impact, again, focusing on local bridges. So glad to help again, as we talked about as Josh talked about, we've been diligent in bridge conditions and regrettably got less money because our bridges are in good shape. But hey, we'd rather be ahead than behind when it comes to bridge condition. The last project I will update you on was in GDOT District 6, which is Congressional District 14 in Murray County. And this is a replacement of a state route bridge, State Route 61, over County Road 182, and also the CSX Railroad. You can see them from the proximity map. They all come together right there. This replaced a bridge that was originally built in 1905. So that's a pretty good life cycle of a bridge. The contractor was Summers and Taylor Incorporated. It opened to traffic on July 22nd. Represents a $7.2 million investment in the replacing the bridge over a road, and then of course the railroad, which provides for double stack. And as Carol gave a great presentation on our rail program, definitely helping rail traffic as well as state route traffic. This project opened ahead of schedule as well. Now, as always, I'd like to highlight the great work of our staff and the great work they do, and I appreciate the acknowledgement already at the board meeting today of the great work of our staff and team here. But it's always great to highlight special achievements, and I'm proud to announce that we have 2 employees, Maria Rue and Spencer Lord, who are in procurement for receiving their certification from the Universal Public Procurement Certification Council as certified professional public buyers. The UPPCC offers 2 distinct levels of professional certification for procurement folks. The one is the certified professional buyer, and the other is the certified, that's a tongue twister, certified public procurement officer. Again, these are for procurement professionals at the state, federal, and local agency level. And so it's really exciting to see that they've received their certifications as certified professional public buyers. And these certifications certainly demonstrate a really high standard of competency, and certainly is regarded among procurement professionals with a high bar. So please congratulate me, congratulate me. I'm trying to hurry. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to hurry. Yeah, it's been a long meeting. Congratulate Maria and Spencer for their achievement. Maybe congratulations me on the tongue twisters. So thanks. Great job, Maria and Spencer. Congratulations to them. All right, let me move on. On the award front, GDOT received an award for our Macon-Bibb County Design Build Bridge Bundles. ASHTO announced that we won at the 2021 America's Transportation Award. Out of 80 projects submitted, we won in the category for quality of life / community development for a small project. And this was again in our projects there in Macon, which were replacing bridges over the Norfolk Southern Railroad. We had an aggressive design build schedule for the Pionono Avenue and College Street bridges that needed to be replaced by August of this year due to the port expansion of the rail yard in the Savannah port, such that Norfolk Southern could run double-stacked train cars to Atlanta. And so we had a time crunch to get that done. The initial construction began back in March of last year, and the Pionono Avenue Bridge was originally built in 1976, but get this, the bridge replacement was completed in 25 days and opened to traffic in June 2nd. And the College Street Bridge, which is more than 125 years old, was replaced as well, including preserving the bricks, and part of the bridge structure as well has been preserved and now part of a monument dealing with its history in a nearby park, which is in a very residential area, I might add. So this is pretty awesome to be acknowledged and as an award winner, and we move on now as a regional winner to the nation's competition to be in the top 12 finalists. So we'll tell you when to vote, and vote often for this opportunity to maybe win a national award. Speaking of awards, let me move into the USDOT has announced that Georgia will receive $650,000 grant for Small Community Air Service Development Program. And so that is an awesome announcement where this $650,000 will be used for a marketing program to support several small hub and non-hub commercial airports. Those specifically are Albany, Augusta, Brunswick, Columbus, Valdosta, and Savannah. And the effort of this communication and marketing is really, again, to focus on the efforts to reduce the spread of COVID through aviation, and also to focus on Fly Local, Fly Georgia. And so I see a marketing campaign on that, Fly Local, Fly Georgia, coming. Again, to try to retain passengers that are on those borders. As I've mentioned, those airports, they have other choices to go to. So we would like for Georgians to use Georgia's airports that are certainly to the extent possible. So our intermodal team, the aviation group, will work with our communications team to deploy the $650,000 for marketing in this regard. So congratulations to the intermodal team, and we're thankful for having this grant. As always, we focus on safety, and I just want to highlight something that you may have read in a paper recently, and as part of a pilot program that Georgia DOT entered into, our Traffic Operations Office entered into with Carbine, who is a leader in public safety technology. We implemented a 3-phase pilot program that was focused on reducing the average emergency and non-emergency response time using Carbine's connectivity platform called CLive Universe. Carbine is a global public safety technology company that I mentioned that use data platforms that really enable first responders and emergency call centers, such as our traffic management center and our heroes and champs, to connect with a caller using basically a highly secure communication channel where there's not an app required. So there's no special thing you have to have on your phone. Over this course of this 3-month pilot, Gdot gradually integrated Carbine's CLive Universe technology to locate motorists when they call for help on the interstate system. And so let me tell you how great this is. During the pilot program, the average time to locate a motorist improved by 20 minutes. So just think about this. You break down, it may be night, it may be raining, you break down on the side of the road, and the first question is, where are you? And if you've been driving for a while, that's a hard question to answer. Now, most of us here, we follow things called mileposts, and you can see the little signs with the numbers, but the general public never thinks about that. And to complicate matters even more, you get into some of the roads with collector distributor lanes and auxiliary lanes, you know, you're not even sure, you may be knowing that you're going northbound, but if you're in northbound in the interstate or a collector distributor. So there's a lot of time that it takes to assess and triage where somebody is that actually needs help. And so we dropped that by 20 minutes from the initial call to actually locating. So we went from 23 minutes down to 3 minutes to actually pinpoint where somebody is, which then accelerates the time to respond by 9 minutes. So the actual, now that we know where to respond, we save that time. So 23 and 9, look at that, that's, you know, right at 32 minutes of improvement in response time. So we're very excited about that. We want to continue to utilize this technology, and we look to deploy this across the state, again, for our champ and our hero response times. So again, very excited about how we can use technology to improve safety and customer service response. And finally, let me conclude with just a note that I had the opportunity to meet the U.S. DOT Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, a few weeks ago now, up at Peachtree Corners with an event with Representative Congresswoman Carolyn Bordeaux. It was at Peachtree Corners. They have their Curiosity Lab where they're doing great technological advances in the city of Peachtree Corners. They have an autonomous shuttle. We talked about, and the Secretary was able to witness solar panels on the road, very similar to what we have at our partnership with the Ray over in West Georgia at the Welcome Center there at West Point. They also have deployed CV2X technology, the same that we're deploying across the state with the city. And I had the opportunity to highlight Georgia's focus on the electric vehicle supply chain work that's going on. As you know, Georgia has many industries and many manufacturers that are focused on EV. Of course, the largest is SK Innovations, which is up in Commerce, that will be manufacturing electric batteries for electric vehicles. Companies like Heliox, who is basically does electric vehicle charging systems. And of course, who can't forget Bluebird? If you rode to school in Georgia on a school bus, you rode on a Bluebird bus most likely, but they're building electric school buses now. And that's one of the programs that Josh talked about, is there is federal funding for school systems to buy now electric school buses. So we're proud that Bluebird is manufacturing electric buses here in Georgia. And let's not forget Kia Motors over in West Point, as I mentioned, big EV development going on there, and so many others in supply chain. So it was a great opportunity to meet with the Secretary and chat with him. And as I always do, I always like to remind him to keep Georgia on his mind. And so he said he would. So great opportunity there. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, that concludes my report. I'll be glad to entertain any questions or comments.
Just hang on, Russell, we got another award that you don't know about.
Uh-oh. I'm not sure if I can stand any more surprises today.
Today, it gives me great pleasure, and as the chairman and all the board members I know will concur, what a great commissioner we have, his 30-year service award. 30 years that he has been with this department. He started as an intern in 1990. He represents now, or commissioner, for the 10th largest DOT in the country, $3.5 billion in budgetary spending. He was also Governor Deal's planning director. And the board in 2015 unanimously, let me get the word correctly, as our commissioner. And you started out as a little intern. Did you know that? Do you remember those days? I do remember. Okay. And I know I speak for the Transportation Board when I say that we are very grateful for your dedication and hard work. I know you spend many hours on the road and going places and speaking, and as well as you have a great staff here that you have that supports you and working with them. And we're just so thankful for your commitment, your honesty, integrity that you do for this great state and for this department. And we're so happy today to present you with this 30-year award. Now, this is not all. He has another thing happening to him that you may not, some of us may not know about, but I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Tomorrow's his birthday. Did you know? Let's sing happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Russell. Happy birthday to you. Thank you.
I didn't have nothing to do with that.
If I add my faithful service and my birthday together, I'm sort of old.
I didn't say how old you were. Okay, we'll go ahead with our business. Is any new business at this time? This time we will go into our elections. This is the meeting that we elect our new officers for the Transportation Board. And this time I recognize Mr. Boswell for the...
I would like to nominate for officers of Slate, for Chairman Emily Dunn, for Vice Chair Kevin Abel, for Secretary Robert Brown.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All right. Any other nominations? Okay, all those in favor say aye, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried. And let me say I have enjoyed this last year serving as your chairman, and I hope that we will all enjoy our new slate of officers. I know that we will enjoy working with them, and I certainly will.
I will say one thing, and before we get to that part, I remember when I got elected to the board, and I was leaving the Capitol, driving back to Atlanta, somewhere in Atlanta to eat dinner, and I got a phone call from somebody I didn't know. Rudy Bowen. Said, welcome to the board, and I look forward to working with you, and I never forgot it.
I think that was my first call too. So, but right now, before we adjourn, I would like to bring our chairman up, Mr. Rudy Bowen, and I'm honored to give him a token of our appreciation. I think he's done an excellent job this year, especially with this difficulty with our COVID. He has handled it with finesse and great use of technology. So this is really pretty, and it's very fragile. But anyway, I hope you have enjoyed being chairman. You've been on the board for 18 years, is that correct?
I think it was on 2005 or 6 I came on the board.
Okay, well then longer than that. So
No,
there you go. But thank you for the job you've done. We appreciate you, and look forward to working with you still.
Thank you so much, and it's an honor to receive this, and I know my wife will have a special place for this somewhere in the house. It'll be seen. So that's the most important thing. But still, it has been a great year, even though we have had to deal with some other issues in COVID, but at the same time, I want to say it's been a great pleasure for me to work with all the board members, and I will enjoy doing that. I'm very passionate about Gdot. I really am. And I'll speak up and I'll fight for you. So if wherever we are, Gdot is the best, and our employees are the best, and there's no way around that. They are just the best, and our board is the best. And I'm always using terminology like we have the greatest board there is, and they all work together. We have a goal, a common goal to do, and that's to provide the best transportation for Georgia, and that's what we're going to do. And our commissioner does an outstanding job in supporting our board and this state as well. Thank you. We'll adjourn. All right, bud.
Be sure there's 2 more.
Hey, gentlemen.
Take care.
Well, you and I have had a lot of different